There's a lot of things I wanted for Christmas this year. There's a whole bunch of things I wanted for Christmas with this year. Nuclear war with Russia was not one of them. But apparently that's what we're all getting. I don't know. I guess I guess Joe Biden put us all on the naughty list because we voted for President Trump instead of Kamala Harris. And now what do we get for Christmas? Not even coal in our stocking. Nuclear war with Russia. I'll be honest with you, I'd rather have coal in my stocking, but that's not what's going to happen. We'll get to the Russia news and the Joe Biden escalating us into World War III as a going away present here in just a few minutes. But first, President Trump continues to build out his cabinet positions, even as the GOP Senate and Congress, they do their best to try and thwart it. They do their best to try to smash that cabinet into smithereens. There's been a couple new picks. There's one rumored pick, and there's been a brand new pick. Yesterday, we found out that former Road Rules and Real World star, plus current Fox News host, and most importantly, a guy with a lot of political experience because he was a congressman from Wisconsin, Sean P. Duffy. There he is. Sean P. Duffy has been chosen to replace Pete Buttigieg as the Department of Transportation Secretary. He's going to be the head of the Department of Transportation. Finally, a transportation secretary who actually may be able to do something about transportation instead of just make it worse. Sean P. Duffy, not to be confused, by the way, with Sean P. Diddy Combs. They're two different people. This is Sean P. Diddy Combs, is the rap star and mogul who's accused of all these, horrible, terrible things with baby oil. Sean P. Duffy is the nominee for Secretary of Transportation. Sean P. Diddy Combs and Sean P. Duffy, new White House Transportation Secretary under President Donald Trump. That is, if he gets through the confirmation process, which, man, he should breeze right through the confirmation process. Of all of Donald Trump's recent appointments, it seems like Sean Duffy is the most, let's just say the least controversial. Although, if you're keeping score at home, that's the second Fox News host who has been tapped to serve in President Donald Trump's cabinet. Which means he's got two Fox News hosts and two congressmen from Florida. So Florida and Fox News are tied right now for cabinet appointments, which is very, very exciting. And Mike Waltz, let's be honest, is on Fox News all the time anyway. So it's kind of like it's 3-2, really. Mike Waltz could go either way, but I digress. Listen, there was more breaking news just before we came on here. It appears that Donald Trump is set to pick Howard Lutnick as the Commerce Secretary. This, according to the Wall Street Journal, and there's other outlets. He's the former Cantor Fitzgerald chief executive, or I guess he's the current Cantor Fitzgerald chief executive. You may remember him from the MSG rally. He told the really heartfelt story about how on the day that the Twin Towers were destroyed by the 9/11 terrorists, how he lost hundreds and hundreds of his employees and how he had to rebuild his entire company from the ground up, and how just devastating it was for him and his family and his company. And he's been friends with President Trump for a very long time, working with the transition team. You've probably seen him on television going out there and being a cheerleader for President Trump. He's all rah, sis, boom, bah. He loves tariffs, and everyone thought this guy's a shoo-in for Treasury. Turns out he's not a shoo-in for Treasury. Turns out he's going to be the Commerce Secretary. And there's a lot of rumors as to why he's not Treasury, why he's transportation instead. I don't go by the rumors. I wait, and I want to hear what the actual administration has to say about it. And then I'll make my decisions. But no official word yet. This is still, of course, just a report. This is still just a report from the White House. I'm sorry, from the Wall Street Journal. We're waiting on official word. And when we get official word, we will get it to you. We will get it to you as soon as we hear something. We will let you know about it because we're very excited to share that information with you. Before we get into the battle for the cabinet, let's talk a little bit about what's going on here with World War III, because World War III seems like it's something we should probably discuss a little bit. President Joe Biden has been kind of, he's been a warmonger for a long time. He's one of these guys that tries to tell you, oh no, I'm all about peace. Oh no, I've got great relationships. He always walks around going, I always tell people, don't. That's a big thing. He goes, what would you tell Vladimir Putin? Don't, all that kind of weird stuff. But he has no real clout in the community at large. He has no real clout in the international community. In fact, yesterday he was at that big summit and he was supposed to be in a group photo and he was late. So you know what they did? They just took the photo without him. They just said, forget it. Biden's not here. All right, we're just gonna go without him, and that's what they did. And then he, for whatever reason, wandered off into the jungle, which was a little. I don't know if you saw that, but Joe Biden was out there and he was doing a little press conference, They brought out the podium and stuff so that he feels important. And then when he got done, he just wandered off. He just turned around and walked into the Amazon jungle. Look, they even have the rattles or whatever. It's just, where's he? Everyone's like, where's he going? Where are you going, Joe? One of the theories I saw was that he was going to look for Uncle Bozy. Do you remember how Uncle Bozy got shot down over New Guinea and eaten by cannibals?
He got shot down in an area where there were a lot of cannibals in New Guinea at the time. They never recovered his body.
They never did. And I was like, you know what? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and I'm going to look for Uncle Bozy. I know he's in there. You know what? This may be my last chance. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to try to find Uncle Bozy's remains because they were never actually able to track him down. That's you know what? Thank God for that, because I was having trouble putting together Thanksgiving for this year. But you know, if Joe makes a couple more of these clips for me, it should be no problem. Thanksgiving should be amazing. But let's get back to World War III, because World War III, like I said, it's an important thing to cover. Here's what's going on. President Joe Biden has given Ukraine permission to use ATACMS, which are long-range U.S.-made missiles. And the ATACMS can fire into Russia from Ukraine. And Russia, Vladimir Putin, not a big fan of the U.S. giving Ukraine ATACMS to, attack Russia. A former spokesman for Putin says Russia threatens U.S. with nuclear war by Christmas in chilling World War III warning. The U.S. has been given a chilling World War III by Christmas warning by pro-Putin spokesperson Sergei Markov. Western allies, also including Britain and France, have taken a big jump towards a nuclear conflict by giving Ukraine permission to fire Western long-range missiles into Kremlin territory. A regular Putin mouthpiece, Markov warned that the shock move by President Joe Biden could mean that Britons could be facing a Christmas in shelters. There's a couple of other people reporting this as well. Look, the fact that Joe Biden is acting all aggressive and stuff in the last 60 days of his presidency is really bad form. I don't know what they talked about when they met at the White House in front of that big roaring fire, but clearly I imagine one of the messages that President Trump put forward was, look, you gotta chillax on the Ukraine stuff. I'm going to end this Ukraine war. I can't have you advancing it or moving it forward or exacerbating the point. I don't want you ticking on Vladimir Putin. I'm pretty sure, and again, I don't know what exactly they said, but I'm pretty sure, hey, give Ukraine permission to use long-range ATACMS missiles to fire into Russia was not covered in President Trump's fireside chat with Joe Biden. I could be mistaken, but again, I didn't hear that from any of my sources. Maybe you heard it from your sources. President Joe Biden is acting like, I don't know what he's, again, it's probably not him. We all know. We all know we all know it's not Joe Biden. We know that Joe Biden's not in charge. He's just, he's just wandering around into the jungle. He's got his shades on. You notice this time nobody went to go get him either. Typically what happens is there's usually somebody to guide him. Typically when Joe Biden starts to wander off, Dr. Jill runs up or somebody else, and somebody jumps in and says, no, Mr. President, you got to go this way instead. No, Mr. President, we're over here. No, Mr. President, you're going into the jungle. Nobody did that this time. It's kind of, they just like, he's only got 60 days left. Just let him mosey around. But this whole thing with Ukraine and Russia is very interesting. This should be the winding down of the conflict. And instead, Joe Biden and his administration are winding it up. And it could be that they're angry that they lost the election. It could be that they believe that they're thwarting Donald Trump's efforts, or they're in some way, shape, or form they're going to get back at Donald Trump for being so popular. Gosh darn you, President Trump, for having that agenda that everybody liked and the gumption to go out and sell it to the American people. Gosh darn you for dialing back all of our ridiculous, acts of stupidness and making America great again. We'll show you. We're going to get you involved in a major world war before you come back as president. So that the first thing you're going to do is not drill, baby, drill. The first thing you're going to do is not secure the border. The first thing you're going to be stuck with doing is fighting World War III. With our woke army that we created for you. So take that. Good luck, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. Good luck mounting war with Russia as they're dropping nuclear bombs on European allies on Christmas time. So anyway, that could be the plan. Who knows? It could be that maybe he's just trying to leave a legacy of strength instead of the legacy of dementia that he's been leaving so far. Speaking of war and speaking of battles, there is a war brewing in the Senate. The Senate GOP is hell-bent on destroying Donald Trump's dream team before Donald Trump's dream team is even complete. Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr., all of these picks that Donald Trump said are the people. These are the folks. These are the guys I want. These are the guys I need. These are the guys that will make America great again. They've all come under some kind of contentious microscope already. There have been accusations about Pete Hegseth and his history. There have been accusations about his tattoos being somehow white supremacist tattoos. There have been all these stories popping up about him going out and getting drunk, which I don't know. Show me a soldier who hasn't gone out and gotten drunk once. I don't trust soldiers who don't go out and get totally sloshed once or twice. And then there's RFK Jr. Look, we all knew the stories about RFK Jr. We knew RFK Jr. was going to be selected for some kind of high-ranking health and human services cabinet position. We knew that was not a surprise to anybody. If you've been watching this movie, you pretty much could have predicted how it ended. But now everybody on the left is freaking out about it. No, we can't have RFK Jr. And then there's Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, who is a congressman from Florida, or was until he resigned. Matt Gaetz, who was under investigation by the DOJ, under investigation by the House Ethics Committee, and now could be in charge of the Department of Justice as Attorney General of the United States. Donald Trump's number one pick for the job, and probably one of the most effective people to ever hold that position. When you talk about rooting out government corruption, I mean, this is a guy who walked into the Congress and said, hey, Speaker of the House, I'm vacating the chair. Get your stuff and get out. And he did. Not only did he leave the Speaker's office, he left the House of Representatives altogether. Matt Gaetz was the guy that saw the issue, saw the problem, cut the head off the beast, and went back to work like nothing had happened. He's the kind of guy you want as Attorney General. And for that reason, a lot of GOP senators, a lot of GOP swamp dwellers, a lot of people who've been around Washington, D.C. for a very long time and may or may not care what the voters think, may or may not be loyal to the people who put them in place, may have loyalty not to President Trump or the current Republican Party, but may still be loyal to some of their old school leaders like Mitch McConnell and the special interests that they've sold their souls to over the years. And Mitch McConnell, we reported yesterday, said there will be no recess appointments. There were no recess appointments for President Trump. That was Mitch McConnell's message yesterday. Today, it appears that message is being inflated and repeated by several other members of the Senate. And Molly Hemingway was on Fox News. She gave probably one of the best rebuttals or one of the best explanations as to why in a second Trump presidency, after all that's happened, after everything that's been going on, why Matt Gaetz is the perfect choice for Attorney General.
Right. Matt Gaetz was nominated for this position because we have a problem at the Department of Justice. For the last 8 years, they have run roughshod over rule of law in this country. They have prosecuted political opponents. They ran the Russia collusion hoax. And too many people in Washington, D.C. did not stand up against what was happening there. And many Americans are upset about it. Matt Gaetz is one of the most effective people at fighting that Russia collusion hoax and other information operations, whether it was the Brett Kavanaugh information operation, the Donald Trump Russia collusion hoax information operation, or the one that is referenced here, which is something that the FBI and Department of Justice, which hate Matt Gaetz, looked into and cleared him of any wrongdoing. The idea that this is about the issue is corruption. It's the Department of Justice's corruption, and people are sick and tired of people in Washington, D.C. doing nothing as these people tried to destroy the country and getting upset at someone who actually might root out the corruption there. We don't have a Department of Justice. We have a Department of Injustice, and that's why you get Matt Gaetz as a nominee.
Look at that. The Department of Injustice gets Matt Gaetz. And the whole thing about this Department of Justice investigated Matt Gaetz, but they found no wrongdoing, blah, blah, blah. They keep saying he was investigated by the Department of Justice. Yeah, you know who else was? President Trump. President Trump was investigated and charged by the Department of Justice, and he's president, and nobody seems to have a problem with that. Well, I mean, there are like 73,000 Democrats who do, or 73 million Democrats who do, but otherwise, nobody in the Senate has a problem with that, at least not openly. President Trump won the presidency. He was under investigation by the Department of Justice. He wants somebody to root out the corruption in the Department of Justice. And guess what? It just so happens to be someone who was also investigated by the Department of Justice. And this ethics complaint in the House, you have to keep in mind, there's a couple members of the ethics committee who Matt Gaetz has called out. One of them is our own, and I always hate to admit this, it's our own congressman, John Rutherford. John Rutherford is, it's just sad. John Rutherford is the District 5 representative from Florida, and he hates Matt Gaetz. Why? Well, Matt Gaetz has called him out for some of his stock trading. Matt Gaetz investigates stock trading with congressional members, and he goes out and he publicizes it. And he doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat. If he does something, or if you do something that he believes is immoral and unethical, if you use your power on whatever committee you're on, or just by being a representative, if you use your power to elevate your own financial status and boost your own personal income, which John Rutherford has done. John Rutherford his net worth has increased fivefold since he took office. And as somebody who originally voted for him here in District 5 of Florida, that wasn't why we voted for him. And I haven't made that mistake in a while. But he's somebody that Matt Gaetz has called out. He sits on the ethics committee, and wouldn't you know it, they just happen to be investigating Matt Gaetz. Another one is David P. Joyce from Ohio. And David P. Joyce has also been targeted in Matt Gaetz's crosshairs. And wouldn't you know it, he also sits on the ethics committee. And as someone who sits on the ethics committee, he's probably more than happy to investigate Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz has a lot of enemies. He has a lot of enemies in the Senate and the Congress and Washington, D.C., and that is true to form because, as Winston Churchill once said, you have enemies, good. That means you've stood for something once or twice in your life. And Matt Gaetz stands for good over evil. He doesn't stand for party. He doesn't stand on ceremony. He doesn't stand for tradition. He doesn't care what it used to be like. He doesn't care what the swamp tells you to do. He doesn't care what is acceptable in Washington, D.C. He cares about what's right and what's wrong. And if you're doing something wrong, he's going to call you out on it. And if you don't believe him, ask John Rutherford. Ask Young. Ask Kevin McCarthy. Ask anybody. They'll all tell you. And that's why people don't like him. Donald Trump has been working the phones, apparently. Newsweek reports President Trump making calls to push Matt Gaetz' confirmation through. This is unfortunate. President-elect Donald Trump has been personally calling Republican senators to convince them to push through the confirmation of former Congressman Matt Gaetz as the U.S. Attorney General. Republican Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota told Axios on Monday that Trump has put pretty hold on, let me read this again. Take two. Republican Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota told Axios on Monday that Trump had been pretty persuasive during a recent call regarding Gaetz. Trump has reportedly made multiple calls, with an additional unnamed senator reportedly telling the publication that Republicans were being urged to rally behind Gaetz. Quote, Trump clearly wants Matt Gaetz. I think that's probably why he nominated him. Cramer said of his call with the president-elect, he believes Matt Gaetz is the one person who will have the fearlessness and ferociousness, really, to do what needs doing at the Department of Justice. At least to this point, he's putting his own political capital behind it, he added, and he's a pretty persuasive guy. Gates was also being investigated, blah, 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 blah. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has been leading calls to keep the House ethics report on Gates under wraps ahead of his expected Senate confirmation hearings, telling reporters on Friday that he would strongly request the document remains unreleased. Regardless, the report has since been made available for review by all members of the bipartisan House Ethics Committee. And look, this thing's going to come to light no matter what. Senate Republicans have expressed surprise over Gates' nomination. Some have also suggested that they favor the release of the House report, with Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota having told CNN that the document would see the light of day one way or another. So Matt Gaetz seems to be the object of ire in President Trump's cabinet picks. Now, the interesting thing is that Merrick Garland, who is the current Attorney General, was confirmed by a lot of senators, Republican senators, who now are speaking out against Matt Gaetz. Let me say that again. Merrick Garland, a Democrat, who also investigated Donald Trump, who weaponized the Department of Justice against Donald Trump, against January 6th protesters, against parents at PTA meetings. This is the guy who was in charge of the DOJ when the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago and rifled through Melania Trump's panty drawer looking for documents that they knew full well weren't there. This is the guy that has overseen all of these things. One of the most controversial and corrupt DOJ chiefs in history. And he's gone toe to toe with Matt Gaetz plenty of times in the Congress. Well, Merrick Garland was confirmed by not just Democrats, but by Republicans. And wouldn't you know it, we have a list here of all the Republicans who confirmed Merrick Garland, and many of them have spoken out against Matt Gaetz. Blunt from Missouri, he's gone. It doesn't matter. Burr from North Carolina, he's already gone. Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia. She says it's an uphill climb for Matt Gaetz. She's spoken out against him. She doesn't seem like she's going to be voting for Matt Gaetz. However, she clearly voted for Merrick Garland, a big resounding yay. Voted for a Democrat, will not support a Republican. Bill Cassidy from Louisiana. He's another story. He voted for Attorney General Merrick Garland. He has not yet come forward and said he will support Matt Gaetz. He will be up for re-election in 2 years. That may sway him. The risk or the threat of a primary challenge by the MAGA faithful who are upset if he doesn't vote for Matt Gaetz may persuade him to make a vote in the right direction, but you never know. Bill Cassidy he voted to impeach President Donald Trump and throw him out of office. So he doesn't really seem like he has loyalty to anyone. Susan Collins, Republican Maine, she's already said she's not in support of Matt Gaetz. And guess what? She voted in support of Merrick Garland. John Cornyn from Texas, same thing. Joni Ernst from Iowa claims that she's leaning against voting to confirm Matt Gaetz, but she voted for Merrick Garland. Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, who has been non-committal on Matt Gaetz. Chuck Grassley. Inhofe in Oklahoma. He's gone. He's no longer there. But Mark Wayne Mullen Mark Wayne Mullen yesterday actually announced that he was going to support Matt Gaetz, and he believed that Matt Gaetz was also the right choice.
I think the president wants a hammer at the DOJ, and he sees Matt Gaetz as a hammer and all these other appointments. He's very confident in where they're at and can deliver the administration that he's wanting. His picks have been maybe unconventional, but we hired an unconventional president, and the American people wanted that. They don't want politics as usual. They want someone that's going to shake up Washington, D.C., and President Trump proved he could do that in 2016, and we've had great results with the economy that followed. The American people saw what happened underneath the Biden administration, and it went to I'm going to use good words here. It went to heck in a handbasket. And then we see where the American people said, we're tired of that. We want something different. So the American people want it to be shook up. And the president is maybe using some picks for these positions that's not conventional, but it's what the American people wanted.
Okay, so Mark Wayne Mullen's in. He's on Team Gaetz, even though his predecessor, Jim Inhofe, was all in for Merrick Garland. Ron Johnson from Wisconsin voted for Merrick Garland. Senator Langford from Oklahoma voted for Merrick Garland. Mitch McConnell, no shocker there, from Kentucky. Moran, Kansas. Murkowski, Alaska. We know that Lisa Murkowski would rather die than vote to confirm Senator Congressman Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. And Lisa Murkowski had no problem with the Merrick Garland yay. Portman in Ohio, he's gone, but we don't know how Bernie Moreno is going to vote yet. Romney, he's gone, but we know that the guy that took his place is probably not going to vote to confirm Matt Gaetz. Rounds in South Dakota, Thune also from South Dakota, and Tom Tillis from North Carolina. These are all Republicans, okay, who voted for Merrick Garland, one of the most partisan Department of Justice attorneys general we've ever seen. This is the guy who hired Jack Smith. This is the guy who was hell-bent on doing whatever he needed to do to thwart Donald Trump using lawfare. This is a guy who abused his position of power more than maybe anybody in the history of our government. And all of these Republicans voted yay to confirm him. They didn't have to, but they did. Now, all of a sudden, 4 years later, we have a Republican. We have a Republican majority in the Senate. We have a Republican president who was given a mandate by the people with the popular vote totals, with the electoral vote totals, with the wave of enthusiasm, with all the football players doing the Trump dance. We have Matt Gaetz, who is a very popular congressperson here in Florida, not very popular with his cohorts in the Congress, but that's not his job, who has said, I will be Attorney General, who President Trump has said wants him to be Attorney General. President Trump is on the phone making phone calls, and you're telling me that some of these turncoat rhino Republicans who clearly voted happily for Merrick Garland are now publicly decrying President Trump's choice of Matt Gaetz? They all need to go. I will keep this list. We're going to keep this list. We're going to check it off. We're going to see if a Republican senator voted for a Democrat but not for a Republican, what even is the point? What even is the point of Republicans in Senate? What even is the point of having the majority in the House or the Senate or anywhere? What is the point of having 53 Republican senators if they're going to vote for Democrats but not Republicans? This is the problem. This is the problem the Republican Party always has, the old school Republican Party, and they've got to be rooted out. The combative conservatives that we have in the House of Representatives, the combative conservatives that we've elevated back to the White House, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and the Department of Government Efficiency with Vivek Ramaswamy. You've got all of these folks everywhere who are willing to do whatever it takes, stand up to whomever it takes, and vote for what the American public wants, what's good for this country. And then you've got all these ridiculous rhinos who are like, well, that doesn't really benefit me, or I don't like the guy. When I interviewed John Rutherford, I said, why aren't you voting for Jim Jordan to be the Speaker of the House? He goes, because I don't like Matt Gaetz. I don't want Matt Gaetz to win. That's a grown adult, by the way, who was elected to a position of power in the House of Representatives saying, I don't want that guy to win, so I'm not going to vote for who he wants me to vote for. It's ridiculous the way it works. If your senator votes for Merrick Garland, but not Matt Gaetz, there's some serious issues, and that's something that needs to be definitely needs to be remembered. Don Jr. was out making the rounds too, and Don Jr. is pushing not just for Matt Gaetz, but for all of these appointments. He goes, look, Matt Gaetz is getting pushed back from GOP senators. That's tragic. RFK Jr., he's getting pushed back too from a lot of these lobbyists and big pharma.
I think a lot of them are going to face pushback for the same reasons. Again, they are going to be actual disruptors. That's what the American people want, but Washington, D.C. doesn't want that. They're going to spend a lot of money on it. Big pharma is going to spend a lot of money like you wouldn't believe, trying to stop Bobby Kennedy from exposing what's going on with big pharma and big ag, the poisoning of our kids and our loved ones for years. They've gotten away with it for far too long. It doesn't work. The wealthiest country in the world can't also be the most unhealthy because of what we're doing to our children. So there's going to be pushback. There's going to be a lot of money spent. It will all be artificial, but that doesn't mean we won't have to deal with it because that's how Washington, D.C. works, Maria.
Yeah, so they understand. Look, they understand the battle. They're ready for it. They understand the fight, and they're ready for it. And I imagine that Donald Trump is not going to back down. I imagine that Donald Trump is going to do whatever it takes to get his nominations through. I don't think he's going to sacrifice a single one of them. I've heard a lot of people say, well, Matt Gaetz is so crazy that if he sacrifices Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, then, he'll get RFK. That'll be the deal. Take Matt Gaetz off the table. We'll give you RFK and we'll give you Pete Hegseth. It'll be some kind of deal like that. Donald Trump's not going to make that deal. First of all, Matt Gaetz resigned from Congress. And a lot of people say, oh, it's because he didn't want the ethics report coming out. No, it's because he knows he's going to be Attorney General. You don't resign from Congress unless you know what's your next move. You don't resign from Congress unless you know you have a job ready, willing, and able, or ready and waiting for you. For example, Mike Waltz, Congressman Mike Waltz from Florida's 6th District, who was just chosen to be Donald Trump's, the National Intelligence Advisor, or the intelligence advisor. He is not still a congressman. He is not yet given up his congressional seat. He's not quit. There will be an opening. We know that for sure. But as of right now, he is still a congressman. He is Congressman Mike Waltz. And eventually he will be sitting in the White House and helping President Trump. And he's going to be the guy, the right-hand man in charge of national security for President Trump. But it is going to be, interesting to see what happens with Matt Gaetz. You don't just give up your seat, though, unless you know there's a plan to put you in place somewhere else. Recess appointments keep coming up. And, the more I think about these recess appointments, the more I have to think, if anyone in the if anyone in the Senate, if any Republican in the Senate is worried or concerned about nominating or voting for Matt Gaetz, for example, let's say that you think, okay, if I vote for Matt Gaetz, then I will lose in my general election next time. The people in my state are going to use that against me. But if you also think to yourself, okay, if I vote against Matt Gaetz, I'm going to be primaried anyway, and I'll never make it to the general, and it won't matter. If that's your way of thinking, then a recess appointment is actually your best bet, because then you just kick the can down the road. You just say, you know what, we're going to go home. We can't come to an agreement. We're not going to get Matt Gaetz confirmed, and let President Trump do it while you're all kicking it back home and chilling with the fam. That, to me, makes the most sense. If you're one of these weak-kneed, lily-livered, spineless Republicans who doesn't want to look bad and doesn't want to go back and explain yourself to the folks back home as to why you voted for Matt Gaetz, if that's you, then you probably are itching for a recess appointment. You would love a recess appointment, because then you don't have to worry about getting primaried, and then you don't have to worry about getting voted out in the general election. So why wouldn't you? It's a win-win for you. All the heat goes back to President Donald Trump. And that's why I believe in the end, recess appointments or some other executive action or some other tool at President Trump's disposal will be the way that Matt Gaetz and maybe a couple of other people get confirmed. It'll be interesting to see. And it's something we're going to have to wait and see, but we will wait and we will see. And we will keep a watchful eye because this is just, we're not even done yet. We've got Howard Lutnick, Commerce. We still don't have a Treasury Secretary. We still don't have we still don't have Housing and Urban Development. God, there's like a couple of other ones I'm forgetting out there too. Education, all of these things. And it's going to be really interesting to see. Education Secretary, I think, is going to be really interesting to see, because we already know that the Department of Government Efficiency basically wants to shut down the Education Department. So if you want to shut down the Education Department, it's going to be really interesting to see who your Secretary of Education is going to be. It might be one of the shortest jobs in history, but again, a very important one, because you'll be overseeing the, destruction of an entire government agency. I'm really actually excited. I'm really actually excited to see what they do with that one. There was another report here that there was the Echelon polling company. They did a poll and they released the results. And I want to get to that here in just a minute. But first, I do want to remind you that Christmas is around the corner. I'm already seeing Black Friday stuff. I'm already seeing Black Friday. If you go on Amazon, it's like Black Friday week. And I'm like, how is it Black Friday week? Black Friday. But I guess they've done their thing there. They're making it a whole week. And I want to make sure that you get into the Christmas spirit, that you get your Christmas paraphernalia, that you get everything you want, and that you're also doing your Christmas shopping early. And that's why we've already re-released The Untold Story of Christmas. This is the book that we've been telling this story for years. And last year we put it in this beautiful book, which again, everyone that gets this, not everyone, but a lot of people say, This book, not only is it a beautiful story inside, but it's so elegant and the cover's so beautiful, it looks like a Christmas decoration. And so I leave it out on my table, or I leave it out as part of my decor, and people are like, wow, it's amazing. And that was part of the point. You know, here in my house, what we do is we leave out our Christmas books so that whenever you're in the mood, you can come up and you can pick one out and you can read it. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, or Frosty the Snowman, or I don't know, we got a whole bunch of them. Story of the Manger. And this is one of them too. So if you're looking for a fantastic story about Jesus Christ, about Christmas that you haven't heard before, or that's a new and unique that your family's going to love, a brand new tradition, and you want a book that you can leave out and get lots of compliments on, this is the way to go. The Untold Story of Christmas. We have, you can get multiple copies. You can give them away as gifts. And think about this. If you're like me, what's going to happen is you're going to blink. Thanksgiving's going to go by. All of a sudden, you're going to get invited to parties, or your kids are going to get invited to parties, or you're going to need a white elephant gift or something like that. Get a bunch of these and you'll be ready to go. The mailman, you're like, oh, I forgot to tip the mailman. Here, throw a book in the mailbox and say, thank you so much for helping me. All of these things. You never know around Christmas time when you're going to need an extra gift, an extra perk, an extra something or other. And this book makes a great gift for anyone of any age. They're going to love it. The Untold Story of Christmas.com is where you go to get your copy. All right. So you're not going to believe this. You may actually believe it. I didn't believe it, and then I did believe it. There is a brand new poll. Echelon put a poll in the field, and they asked Democrats, who do you want to run for president for your party in 2028? And you will not believe the top 5 vote getters. You may actually. But they polled Democrats, and they said, who is the number 1 pick for the Democrat Party to run for president as the nominee in 2028? And number 5 on that list was Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, former vice presidential running mate of Kamala Harris, all around creepy dude. Tampon Tim. He came in 5th. Now, keep in mind, this guy was almost the vice president. I mean, not almost. He came nowhere close, but he was on the ticket. He was chosen to be the second most powerful man in the world. And now, just a couple weeks later, the Democrats put him 5th on the list. They don't want him to be the nominee. I don't think a lot of them wanted him to be on the ticket this first go round. I think a lot of people still blame Tim Walz for being the reason that Kamala Harris lost. He wasn't. I mean, he was one of them. He was an awful pick right from the get-go. What with his stolen valor issues and all the other things that popped up, the Tampon Tim nickname stuck and probably did a lot more harm than it did good. His weird and bizarre hand gestures, the things that he would say, his RBF, his horrible debate performance against J.D. Vance was just deplorable. And of course, just look at the guy. He came in, he got 6% of the vote of all of those Democrats that were polled when it comes to who do you want to be your presidential candidate in 2028. I imagine just getting 6% of the vote after being on the ticket just weeks before, that probably heralds the end of one's political career. Number 4, Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana. This guy, you may remember, ran for president back in 2020. He ran with, like every other Democrat, Bernie Sanders, Amy Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard, Kamala Harris, and he dipped out. He actually won a couple of the early primaries, but he dipped out because Joe Biden offered him the cush cabinet position of transportation secretary. I imagine they went to him and they said, look, Pete, you're like, 35, 36 years old. You're gay. Do you really think America's ready for a young, handsome, gay president? We don't think it's your time. But if you dip out of the race, if you drop out now, we'll make you some cabinet position, maybe transportation or something. He then went on to become what some people are saying is the worst transportation secretary in the history of our country. And by some people, I mean me. We had the horrible, just the god-awful 4 years of transportation mishaps, crises, if you will. Now, I'm not just talking about the supply chain issues that blocked up the ports around Christmas time a couple of years ago. Remember all those cargo ships were just floating around? They're just floating around out there outside of California, LA, San Francisco. They couldn't get them in. Why? They couldn't unload them. There were no longshoremen, and then there weren't trucks that could come and haul the cargo off to wherever it needed to be. So they just sat out there for weeks. Then, of course, there was the airline controversy last year when all of the airline systems went down and people were trapped in the airports over the holidays, couldn't get out, couldn't fly anywhere. Not to mention what went wrong in East Palestine, Ohio, when the train derailed and that big poisonous plume of smoke rose up over the entire area, poisoning fish and waterways and everything else. He didn't even go visit until after President Trump did. President Trump went in and said, I'm going to go see the people of East Palestine. Joe Biden never went. We're still waiting for him. Mayor Pete finally showed up. One of the worst transportation secretaries. But in the Democrat Party, what they do is they have this fail up mentality. They have a fail up mentality. So if you fail as transportation secretary, then people are like, maybe we should run him as president instead. That's why he's number 4 on the list. Number 3, Josh, I was too Jewish to run with Kamala Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro, he may have actually dodged a bullet. Had he been Kamala's running mate, he may not even be on this list. But Josh Shapiro, it was a head scratcher for a lot of people. Really, when you look at it, we don't know that the reason Josh Shapiro wasn't chosen was because he was Jewish and there was a huge crisis in the Democrat Party between the Jewish voters and the pro-Palestinian Muslim American voters. We don't know that. It's probably a safe bet. I mean, it's definitely something strategists have warned about. But Josh Shapiro is from Pennsylvania, governor of Pennsylvania, very popular in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was a must-win state. Kamala Harris did not win it. Maybe because she didn't have Josh Shapiro. There are other reasons. There are way other reasons. But Josh Shapiro came in at number 3 on the list of potential nominees in 2028 for the Democrat Party. Number 2, Gavin Newsom, or Newscum, as some people, as President Trump likes to call him. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This guy, look at him. He's always in front of a camera. I tried to find a photo of Gavin Newsom where he wasn't in front of a camera. Doesn't work that way. He's always in front of cameras. Gavin Newsom, who has been itching for the job of president since the day he was born. He's got the hair, he's got the tan, he's got the look, he's ready to go. He was a staple at the White House. He stayed at the White House even when Joe Biden wasn't there. He pretended to be Joe Biden's best friend, his BFF, his closest confidant. He pretended to be somebody that Joe Biden could confide in. He was ready, willing, and able to step in at any moment should Joe Biden be unfit to run for president. I guess he forgot that there was another person in his stead. This is a guy who debated Ron DeSantis on Sean Hannity's show for some reason, like they were both running for president. Neither one of them were. Ron DeSantis wasn't the presidential nominee. Gavin Newsom wasn't the presidential nominee, but they both agreed to a debate on the Sean Hannity show, I guess in preparation for 2028. And the voters on the Democratic Party, they think that he's a decent pick. They think that he's one of the guys because he came in second on the list. He came in second when they said, hey, who do you want to be the Democrat nominee in 2028? The Democrat voters said, we would like Gavin Newsom, 8% of the vote. But that's still nowhere near the winner. The number 1 pick with 41% of the vote. Democrat voters selected to run in 2028 for president, Kamala Harris. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The cackle will be coming back, according to this poll. Kamala Harris, who just lost the electoral vote by the largest margin for a Republican in decades. Kamala Harris, who just lost the popular vote to a Republican, something else that hasn't happened in decades. Kamala Harris, who oversaw the reddening of America. I mean, you want to talk about a GOP takeover. You want to talk about a shift in the political mindset of an entire country. All you have to do is look at the final numbers on the map. Kamala Harris, who never won a primary, who no one ever voted for to be a presidential nominee and somehow fell into it, campaigned with Tim Walz, again, the worst. Tim Walz was the worst pick for vice president since Kamala Harris. And you put the two of them on a ticket together, thinking you're going to win. Well, 41% of voters believe that in 2028, Kamala Harris is the go-to candidate for president, which means you're going to hear more of those speeches. You're going to hear more of those non-answers. You're going to hear more of that cackle. You're going to hear more bizarre stories about falling out of a coconut tree. You're going to hear all about her I don't know, eating bacon on Sunday morning with her nieces, all that stuff. There's going to be more paid celebrities. In fact, probably she'll have to run because she'll still be paying off the $20 million that she had to hand to Beyonce and Oprah and Megan Thee Stallion and Lizzo and Eminem. I mean, it is going, if you're a celebrity and you're on the left, get ready because you're going to have another huge financial payday come 2028 if Kamala Harris runs for president again, because Democrats, they don't endorse their friends for free. They do it for multiple millions of dollars. But Democrats never learn. They never learn. There's only one person on the planet who's happier about Kamala Harris being the Democrats' number one choice to run in 2028 than Kamala Harris is. And that is this guy right here, J.D. Vance. If J.D. Vance is the nominee for the Republican Party in 2028, and if J.D. Vance acts and excels as vice president, as many people believe that he will, and if J.D. Vance has not just the grooming by President Donald Trump, but the appointment or the blessing or the endorsement of President Trump in 2028, then Kamala Harris, she may lose by an even bigger margin than she did in 2024. That's something to look forward to, I guess. Man, I got to tell you, it's hopefully they find somebody. It's a bad scene when your party when you look around and all your party has to offer is Kamala Harris. I mean, if that's your number one go-to, then you really have to do some soul searching. In fact, there's a lot of soul searching that has to be done in the Democrat Party. Not only is there soul searching, but Democrats seem to have just totally collectively lost their minds. CNN had, what's her name, Brzezinski on. And this woman, I don't know where she gets her information, but they were debating the report that President Trump said he would use the military and military forces and military assets to overcome the invasion at our southern border and help to get illegal criminal immigrants out of our country and back home where they belong. And listen to what happened on CNN. This woman lost her mind.
On the Upper West Side of Manhattan, there is a shelter that houses undocumented immigrants. And I can guarantee you, I can promise you with every fiber of my being, because I'll probably be one of those people, that if anybody comes for these people and tries to drag them out by force, there will be protests of people like me, American citizens, who are going to stand there and do everything possible to prevent these women and children, which is all who these people are.
How about the criminals? How about the terrorists? How about the convicted?
How do you sort through? How do you know who it is? How do you sort through?
That's the problem. I don't know who it is.
Stop. I'm sorry. I live next to these people. I can tell you they are women and they are children. Are there terrorists among them? I don't know. But I can tell you that there are.
Neither does the government.
But I can tell you. But let me tell. Okay. But what I'm telling you right now, practically speaking, is that there will be people, American citizens, who will prevent these little kids from being dragged out of these shelters. There are. And what's going to happen to these people? What is going to happen to the military when the military opens fire on us?
No one's. Can you say? Hang on one sec, Chuck. We're way down a rabbit hole here.
Scott Jennings is like, dude, what are you even talking about? What is going to happen to the American people when the military starts firing on us? This woman, Brzezinski, she believes that Donald Trump saying he's going to use the military to help in the deportation effort and to help secure the border means that he's going to send troops into New York City to open fire onto American citizens at a homeless shelter. I'm sorry, the NYPD can handle any protesters in New York City. I don't know if you've seen the New York Police Department, but they're pretty solid when it comes to crowd control and separating people from openings. This is a ridiculous statement. This is just more fear-mongering and fear tactics from the left. They want you to think that Donald Trump is going to be ripping people out of shelters, women and children. They want you to think that these helpless immigrants who live just down the street, apparently, from her, which, I mean, I guess she's okay with. They want you to think that he's going to go in and he's going to grab these poor women and their children and throw them in some kind of armed troop carrier and drive them across the border and throw them out into the hot Mexico sun. Just leave them there in the desert to be eaten alive by coyotes. That's what she believes. That's not the case at all. Donald Trump is not just going to bring in the 82nd Airborne to carpet bomb the immigrant populations here in the United States of America. No, he has people in place. He has experts. He has a meticulous plan. In fact, Tom Homan, the new border czar under President Trump, was on Fox News, and he explained there is a simple maybe not simple, but there is a 3-step process to getting immigration under control in this country.
Well, look, I think the president's been clear on the stage. As far as the deportation operation, we will prioritize public safety threats and national security threats because they pose the biggest danger to the United States. He's got 3 rails. So we'll do the deportation operation with the priorities I just talked to you out of the gate. That'd be the priorities. Second thing is secure that border. Lock that border down and catch and release and secure the border. The third rail is we got over 300,000 missing children. Over 500,000 children have been trafficked into the United States. This administration released them to unvetted sponsors, and they can't find 300,000 of them. And based on my 3.5 decades, some of these children are in forced labor. We already found some in forced labor. Some are in forced sex trafficking. Some are living with pedophiles. We need to save these children. So that's going to be the third rail.
All right, so there you go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get all these criminals out of here. If there's criminals, they got to go. If they're illegal criminals and they're murderers and they're rapists and they're drug dealers and they're gang members, they're going first. That's number one. Then we got to secure the border. We got to make sure that the wall's built. We got to make sure the border patrol is ready to go. We got to get all the drones. We have to get with Mexico because keep in mind, Mexico is an important part of this. Mexico can secure their southern border, which helps with the flow of illegal immigrants up through Central America. And if you have a stay in Mexico policy, which Donald Trump will reenact on day one, then all of a sudden Mexico starts taking care of its southern border because they don't want all these illegal gang lords and drug dealers and murderers hanging out in Mexico either. Fun fact, no country wants these people. Their own countries don't even want them. That's why they shipped them all here. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is let's find all these kids that are missing. Let's find all these missing children that Joe Biden didn't care about, that Kamala Harris, former border czar, didn't care about, that Alejandro Mayorkas didn't care about. Let's find them and let's get them home. Let's get them back with their family. Let's get them back where they belong. That's the 3-step plan. Seems logical, seems simple, seems commonsensical, seems humane even. And it seems like that's going to be the way it is. It's not going to be the military going into homeless shelters and shooting Americans, dragging out. They're not going to shoot American protesters who are standing in front of these homeless shelters and then ripping out the women and the children. Also, I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of these protesters out front of these homeless shelters. I mean, I saw the numbers in New York City. I've seen the numbers in a lot of these cities. I saw Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden and the 90,000 people who were standing outside. The reason that, look, Eric Adams is not a fan of illegal immigration. Eric Adams has been begging Joe Biden and his government to do something to help New York City. New York City's head is broken. We're bankrupt. We'll never come back from this. New York City is forever changed. That's a Democrat mayor calling out to Joe Biden and to his immigration czar and his Homeland Security Department saying, please help us. New York City needs your help. We are Democrats. We are Democrat voters. I'm a Democrat mayor. You're a Democrat president. And we are overrun with illegal aliens because of your Democrat policies. And you know what Joe Biden did? He had Mayor Adams indicted because that's what the Democrats do. They indicted Mayor Adams when he spoke out against Joe Biden's immigration. The Democrats are eating their own because they want mass immigration in these cities. So I don't think there's going to be a large protest like Rodzinski thinks. Julie Rodzinski's going to be out. She's going to be out there all alone. No one's going to need to shoot anybody, nor would the American military ever shoot Americans to extract illegal immigrants from a homeless shelter. They're much more highly trained than that. And with Pete Hegseth at the helm, they'll understand the assignment and they'll get it done. They'll get it done fairly quickly, I imagine. But this is exactly what we're up against. This is what we're going to be up against. We're going to be up against the left taking everything that the Republicans do and say, turning fear-mongering, turning it into some kind of extremism, and trying to publicize that. CNN, for whatever reason, still has ratings. They're still on the air. MSNBC doesn't. That's why Joe and Mika are headed down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Donald Trump's you-know-what and try to get some ratings back on their network. MSNBC is failing. CNN is failing. So they have to get back to extremism. They have no choice. They can't, sucking up to Donald Trump or being nice to Republicans or doing what Joe and Mika Brzezinski did was the worst thing that they could have done. They went down to Mar-a-Lago and they tried to pretend like they wanted to be friendly with President Trump, like they wanted to make amends. They went down there screaming, mea culpa, let's be buds. And they came back and they reported, okay, Donald Trump's the president. You know what we're going to do? We're going to accept that. And we're going to open up a line of communication. And you know what happened? The 25 viewers they had left revolted. The 25 people that watch Morning Joe were so disgusted, so distraught, that they started screaming and yelling, you're a traitor. Well, on CNN, Julie Rodzinski, look, she may be an idiot, but at least she knows which side her bread is buttered on. She knows that she's not going to get more support by saying maybe Donald Trump's right, maybe these people should go back where they came from. No, she's going to double down on the crazy. And she's going to say, I will be standing there ready to take a bullet from our own military when they come to shoot me so they can take these immigrants back from whence they came. I mean, that's what's going to save CNN. That's what's going to save MSNBC. And they're going to figure it out pretty quickly. They're not going to get less crazy. They're going to get more crazy because that's all they know how to do. Speaking of crazy, let me share with you one of my favorite stories that's popped up. And this is why I'm really excited for Congress to come back in session. Nancy Mace from South Carolina. Nancy Mace, Congresswoman from South Carolina. Nancy Mace does not want to pee with dudes. Seems simple. Nancy Mace does not want to share a bathroom with a biological male. And being in Congress, she feels like she shouldn't have to. Well, she introduced a bill preventing transgender people from using female bathrooms in the Capitol. She introduced this bill. Under the bill, a member, delegate, resident, commissioner, officer, or employee of the House may not use a single-sex facility, including a restroom, changing room, or locker room in the Capitol or House office buildings other than those corresponding to the biological sex of such individual. The Sergeant at Arms for the House of Representatives would be responsible for enforcing the bill, according to the text of the bill. In a post on X, which included photos of the bill, Mace wrote, biological men do not belong in private women's spaces, period, full stop, end of story. Here's the actual resolution. Whereas allowing biological males into single-sex facilities, such as restrooms, blah, 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 officers and employees of the House who are female, now therefore be it resolved. A member, delegate, resident, commission officer shall not use the thing other than their... it's very straightforward. It's very quick. It's very simple. And she's introduced this bill. And a lot of people are saying, well, why? Why is it that she introduced this bill? Well, wouldn't you know it, there is, I believe for the first time ever, a transgender member of Congress. And that person believes that this is a direct attack on them, I guess is what you would say. Sarah McBride, soon to be the first transgender member of Congress. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries asked about the bill and said he hasn't seen it yet. But driving the new two-page resolution is the arrival of Sarah McBride, the first transgender member of Congress. Sarah McBride was born a biological male, yet identifies as a female. Biologically, however, Nancy Mace says she belongs in the men's room and not in the women's room or the women's locker room or any of these changing rooms. She was asked outside the Capitol building about it yesterday, and here's what she said.
Not be in the locker room, should not be in changing rooms, should not be in our restrooms either. And I'm going to be standing in the brink, standing in his or her way, putting a stop to this insanity and this nonsense. She doesn't get a say. This is about real women and women's rights. And the far left, radical left, they want to erase women and women's rights, and I'm not going to let them.
Would you want Sarah McBride then to use the men's restroom outside of the changing room?
She was born a biological male. She should use the men's restroom. That's how it should work.
What's the mechanism for checking who's qualified to use the ladies' room then? Like, just sort of generally.
I mean, that's a loaded question, isn't it? What's the mechanism for deciding who's able to use a ladies' room? I don't know. Your eyes. I think isn't that an optical? That's like a visual test, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, right? To quote Ketanji Brown Jackson, I'm not a doctor. I don't know I have a guess. I think I could look at somebody and make that determination. But anyway, here's what she said.
Sarah McBride has identified herself as a trans person, but what would be the, I guess
Here's the deal. Biological men shouldn't be in women's private spaces, period. End of story.
So this is specifically because Sarah McBride is coming to Congress?
That and more. So, I mean, if we can't do it here, we can't do it anywhere. I've been strong on women's rights for several years now, and it's time to make sure that we protect women and girls everywhere, and it doesn't stop here.
Yeah, by the way, I couldn't stop laughing when Nancy Mace said biological males don't belong in women's private spaces, period. And I thought, oh, her poor husband. Sarah McBride, by the way, the first transgender member of Congress, is from, guess which state? If you said Delaware, home of Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., you are correct. Nancy Mace also released this video.
The radical left is calling me an extremist for being a feminist, fighting to protect the rights of women and girls. If being a feminist makes me an extremist or a bigot or a monster, I am totally here for it, because I'm going to fight like hell for every woman and every little girl across this country to protect you and keep you safe.
By the way, I am all about not just this bill, but I'm all about these politicians becoming influencers and basically walking through the halls of Congress with cameramen and just making these official. It's a great video. I saw, by the way, last time I was at Congress, I was actually doing this with Representative Aaron Bean from Florida's District 4. And we were walking through the catacombs. We were walking through Congress. I had my camera out. I had my microphone. And it's a great, to me, I just love it. I love that, look, if you've got a message to send, you just send it out there. And Nancy Mace gets it, grabs one of her assistants and says, get your phone. We're gonna do a PSA. And she does it right there from the halls of Congress and says, they call me an extremist. I'm not an extremist. I'm standing up and I'm fighting for the rights of women. I'm standing up and I'm fighting for the rights of girls. Now, this bill comes to the floor if Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, wants to bring this bill to the floor. So, does Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, want to bring this bill to the floor? What does Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, have to say about this bill? Well, here's what he said. Oh, hold on. Let me make sure that this is going through the right audio. Here we go. Here is Mike Johnson. He was asked about it. Listen carefully.
Mr. Speaker, is freshman-elect Sarah McBride a man or a woman?
Look, I'm not going to get into this. We welcome all new members with open arms who are duly elected representatives of the people. I believe it's a command that we treat all persons with dignity and respect, and we will. And I'm not going to engage in silly debates about this. There's a concern about the uses of restroom facilities and locker rooms and all that. This is an issue that Congress has never had to address before, and we're going to do that in deliberate fashion with member consensus on it, and we will accommodate the needs of every single person. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Do you plan on bringing Nancy Mace's transgender bill and putting that into the rules package?
I'm not going to address the plans on any of that. I just told you what I'm going to say about the issue. I'm not going to engage in this. We don't look down upon anyone. We treat everybody with dignity and respect. That's a principle that I've pursued my whole life, and we will take care of this, issue of first impression for Congress, as we will any other thing. We'll provide appropriate accommodation for every member of Congress.
Okay, so we don't know if the transgender bill will be in Mike Johnson's package. Sorry. Sometimes I feel and I act like I'm 12 years old. But that's Mike Johnson being totally non-committal. We respect everybody. We're going to respect everybody. And I understand that there's a debate on this issue and we will make accommodations for everybody. So I imagine what's going to happen is you are probably going to see some kind of battle over the bathroom in the Capitol. And Nancy Mace is going to be battling so that women don't have to go into the restroom and see another woman standing there urinating, which is not something typically women do. And there's also going to be some kind of accommodation so that I'm sure Sarah McBride, the first transgender congressperson elect from the state of Delaware, will have some kind of safe space to do whatever it is she needs to do in that particular safe. Look, who knew it would come to this? Who knew that one of the first battles of the next Congress would be whether or not transgender women were allowed in biological women's bathrooms? Also, I'm going to be honest with you. I thought that all of these Congress people had their own restrooms. And they had their own restrooms, they had their own showers, they had all that kind of stuff. But apparently not. Apparently, I guess if you're a freshman or if you're brand new, You don't get the big office with the private bathroom. That, I guess, comes, after years and years of Nancy Pelosi she probably has a private bathroom, and it is probably private, whatever else, acupuncturist, all those other private wet bar, private bartender. Look, if you got a bartender, if you're Nancy Pelosi and you drink as much as you do on the job, you definitely need your own private bathroom, because you're probably in there quite a bit. Listen, we are going to keep tabs on this very important story. We're also going to let you know anytime there's another appointment. Anytime that there's another appointment, you're going to get the information from us first. We are going to make sure that as we follow along with the goings on in Washington and the battle for the cabinet, that President Trump not only gets to pick the people he wants, but that the Senate does their due diligence and puts those people in the positions of power that the president wants them in. And one of the ways we do that is by reporting every single day in our brand new podcast, which is doing exceptionally well, by the way. And I thank you guys for that. We have climbed the charts. As soon as we announced this podcast, we're only in week 2. We've only had like 7 or 8 episodes. And as soon as we announced this podcast, it catapulted up to the top of the news and the politics podcast charts. And a lot of it is because thousands and thousands of people have been downloading it and listening to it. And I appreciate that. But also the reviews have been astronomical. We've already gotten 200 reviews. And that's something that also benefits and helps podcasts climb up the ladder as quickly as possible. So if you have downloaded the 47 Daily Podcast, which brings you daily news direct from the Trump transition team and eventually the Trump administration and the Trump White House, when we report on the first 100 days in the next 4 years, all the information, the real news, not the fake news, no spin, no propaganda, no lies. It goes from the White House to my mouth to your ears for the next 4 years. And that's the goal of the 47 Daily Podcast. So if you've downloaded it, awesome job. Please leave a review. If you haven't downloaded it, please download it and subscribe, and also leave a review. In fact, you should subscribe and leave reviews and like all of our stuff, because that's how we continue to grow our messaging. That's how we continue to move forward. If you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, thumbs up, subscribe, share this. We've got to continue to grow, because as you can see, there are still battles to be won. We used to be battling Kamala Harris and the Democrats. We used to be battling the woke mindset. We used to be battling against all of the fake news media and the censorship on social media. Now we're still battling all of that, but we're battling each other. And we've got to figure out a way to realize that we are one party. And just like the Democrats vote in lockstep, just like the Democrats support each other, we've got to figure out a way to get these rhino Republicans either in line with what President Trump and the country want, or out of office. And that's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of information. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of inspiration. It's going to take us working together every single day. So subscribe to this channel so that you're watching our live feeds, you're downloading our podcasts, you're checking out our videos, you're following along, you're staying informed, and you get the news, the information, the entertainment, the inspiration, the enlightenment, everything you need to continue to fight so that we can save the Republic.